Uh-huh. We're live. All right, so that should be all good. Let's turn that up a little bit. Okay, so it has been a very hot week. Been a lot been going on this week. So a couple of things to share that I think will be useful and relevant. I also thought I put in the title the whole idea of minimum viable solution, just as a little bit of a label to kind of remind me of some of the things I wanted to share that have come up this week, both from more from a way of how I approach, say, advertising and marketing online, in terms of very much kind of a martial arts approach, a Krav Maga approach, if you like. But I'll get into that. Other things that have been going on, I think I mentioned at the beginning of the week, if you're inside the group, you'll have seen I did a post. Oh, let me show this. Yeah, join the group. Yeah, join the group. That's the link to the group. If you're watching this on the page or you're watching this on YouTube and you'd like to, and you are on Facebook, then, if you're not on Facebook, I wouldn't suggest join just for my group. But if you are on Facebook, then highly recommend you come join the group. It's where I post during the week in terms of insights that I share, comments, not comments. I mean, obviously I respond to comments, but posts, content that I create. So it's all in there during the week. And then I tend to send out an email review at the end of the week. So you can get, if you get on both, you'll see different aspects of elements that would help you in terms of progressing you, moving you forward towards your goals. So certainly a good community. I think there is value in being in a community where there is a common mission, a common vision. I think where the elements where you're surrounded by people that are moving down a similar path, even though from a pure content point of view, you might be in a very different niche, but from a business point of view, obviously we all share a common aim in terms of growing that business. Certainly for me, my values are very much around autonomy and freedom, impact, making a difference, and building a business that supports that lifestyle so that I get to live my mission, that I get to have autonomy over my life, and then I get to obviously make a difference in other people's lives as well. So that, I think, is the common element that connects everybody in the group. So highly recommend you come join the group if you haven't already. If you watch it on YouTube, then by all means, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you get all the future updates. Ta-da! Got some little graphics to flip around with and play with. Let's take that one off. Okay, so that's that kind of thing. Let's take that off as well. All right, so good morning to anybody who's watching right now. If you're watching in the replay, then obviously leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Always good to know where you are. And I've got let me bring up my comments. I think last time I forgot to click the comments on my side, so I couldn't see them coming in. All right, so that's that done. Right. So things that have been happening this week. Well, first of all, I have been playing with nootropics. Now, what they are is it's kind of, well, they're a mixture of things, really. For example, caffeine will be considered a nootropic in the sense of it supports alertness and it supports cognitive development and enhancement more than anything else. So I was listening to an interview a couple of weeks ago, and it's one of those things where it suddenly hits you and you go, duh. But I was listening to an interview a few weeks ago, and one of the people I was listening to was talking about how he had suffered from ADHD, so attention deficit hyper disorder, or ADD, which is attention deficit disorder. And he was also explaining that he'd sort of, in kind of resolving that problem, he'd come across a lot of research and he'd spoken to a lot of his friends to discover that, entrepreneurial type people, it's very common. In other words, very common with entrepreneurial type people. So way more, like the national average, I think, is, under 5%. But within the entrepreneurial community, it's more like, 20, 30, 40, potentially, 40+%, which is ridiculously high. Don't quote me on that. I'm just going based on personal anecdote. And so he had started taking, I think he was taking Adderall, which is what's typically prescribed for ADD or ADHD. And he found that helped him focus and he got things done. And it made a big difference. The person he was talking to also said, yep, they discovered that they had traits of ADHD when they'd read a book about it and gone, oh, that I identify with that. Those are things that I do. And I listened to some of the things they were talking about, and I'm like, that's me. I do that as well. So I realized there was an element of, one, I think being highly creative that potentially, obviously I can't say explicitly always, but potentially comes with it. Therefore, if you're very good at being highly creative, then it maybe brings with it other traits that you're not so good at, like staying focused, like making sure, like I got to the place where in order to get things done, I have to be so organized with my diary. Like I have to literally map out not quite every minute, but practically every minute of the day in order to get me to stay on things. And I find it very easy to get distracted online. I find it very easy to forget what I was doing. And as I was listening to this interview, I was going back afterwards through my notes and I was sort of journaling and thinking about what popped in my head. When I first came out of university, I went and got a job with a IT company. So I was working it was in the fashion industry, but I was working in the IT department. And so I was helping program computers and this, that, and the other, which I all found great because it's all problem solving. It's all creative problem solving. So that part of it, completely up my street. What I did notice after a while, though, was that I'd finish on a Friday. I'd come in on the Monday morning. I would not have a clue what I'd been doing Friday or the previous week. I couldn't remember any of it. It just went out of my head. So I got to the point where I would literally have to write everything down on a Friday night in order that when I came in on the Monday morning, I could read what I'd written and go, oh, that's what I was doing. And then I could go find that and get on with it. And I still do the same now. Like I capture so many ideas in my journal, but then I forget to go back to them. Or I go back to them months later, go, oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh, I was going to do that. Oh, I never got around to that. And it's been a bit like that. So I thought, is there certain traits of ADHD? I don't want to take Adderall. I don't want to have to go for a prescription type drug. But because nootropics has taken off as an industry, and I think it's a huge industry now and certainly growing bigger and bigger, is there something in here which can make a difference? And even if I'm not clinically ADHD or ADD, which I don't think I am, even if I'm not clinically like that, would it help some of these traits that I feel I'm missing? And I was explaining this to my kids as well, because I was saying, at school's very regulated in the sense of you go to a lesson at a certain time, you then go to the next lesson at a certain time. Whilst you're in the lesson, you just work on whatever they want you to work on. So there's no need to kind of think about, oh, I need to have a project. I need to do this step in order to do that step. Because you're just in the moment doing what you got to do in the moment. So therefore, I never had a problem at school because I was just doing what I did in the moment. And then, of course, when it came to exams, well, I had my notebooks. I go back, I'd learn everything that was in there. So I never had a memory problem in that respect. But I'm beginning to think that, like intelligence, there are multiple ways of remembering things and multiple contexts that can have an impact on your ability to remember. So I'm great at mapping out a strategy. I'm not brilliant at remembering every single step on that strategy after the event, nor am I brilliant at remembering where we are on the strategy. Does that make sense? So like even mapping it out as a project, I very easily forget where we are in the project. Like I have to look. It's not something that sticks in my head naturally. So I thought, okay, is this something that I should be paying attention to? So I'd kind of looked at a few different brands of different nootropics. I picked a company in the UK just to kind of go, oh, I'll give this a whirl, see what it does. I had done a bit of research. I came across, a couple of things from a molecular level that would have an impact on memory, would have an impact on focus. One of them was an amino acid, which made sense. It was like the particular amino acid L-tyrosine. And so the more as I looked at these things, I was looking at the ingredients of some of these commercial nootropics. And so, I could read on the label what they said it did. And then I'd look at the ingredients. And the ones that talked about focus and maintaining focus all had tyrosine in. So I thought, okay, this obviously is important to your ability to focus. And now I don't know, I haven't done the research yet, but I will do it because I like doing research. I haven't determined whether tyrosine is something that your body makes. And therefore, there's a possibility that if you're not making enough of it, therefore you could struggle with focus, or if it's something you have to take in through your diet, in which case is it missing in the diet? Because that's an area I haven't quite found out yet. But anyway, so I ordered these nootropics. They arrived, and I took 2 because it recommended taking 2 to 3. So I took 2, and within about 30 minutes, you could feel it. It was like my brain suddenly went la 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 la, vroom. It was literally like that. It was night and day. And so last week I got more done with less effort because I wasn't have to try and remembering things and all this sort of stuff. That's Tom, I like that. Meditation and grounding, staying present, walking bare feet. Yeah. I can understand that. I know with my wife used to do work with children with dyslexia, and I know in the work that she did, one of the things that they've noticed as a precursor to children developing, not necessarily dyslexia they tend to model from a parent, but certainly with ADHD is, putting children in shoes too early. So they don't actually get to use their toes. And they found that has a massive impact on their coordination ability. So that would make sense that being bare feet, doing yoga, things like that would make a huge difference. Meditation I do a lot of anyway. Certainly find that very grounding, find that very powerful and useful. But I think it was just from I like to look at things from a number of different angles. Like I believe they all play a part. I believe nutrition plays a part. I believe meditation plays a part. I believe exercise is absolutely necessary for everybody. So all of these things play a part. So I was kind of looking at it through that lens of what impact does each of these little pieces of the spectrum have. So I ordered these stuff. I took them, huge difference, absolute game-changing difference. So mentioned it to a friend. They rushed off and got some as well. So I need to check back in and see what difference it made for them. And of course, I think I mentioned I have a real interest in this whole area and certainly have plans to develop a business from it. And I've started putting the groundwork in for that. And I was in two minds as to whether do I go with developing my own formula, get my own formula developed and branding it my way, or do I go with, to begin with, lead generation affiliate type opportunities. So I contacted the company, asked them to start an affiliate program. They do. Doesn't pay a great deal. So I'm not sure it's viable in terms of what I want to do. But it certainly got me moving further down that path and certainly got me even more interested in the impact this can have. And if this is something which is as common in the entrepreneurial community as I think it is, and I think online, the nature of online is it is distracting. You know, social media in itself is distracting. The internet is distracting. Googling something is distracting. So I think if you even have a smidgen, a semblance of, you know, some of the what would be considered traits of ADHD, then I think the internet can exacerbate that. Like I said, at school, I was okay at school because everything was regulated. Like you just go here, you're in the moment for that lesson. That's it. You forget as soon as you walk out the door, you forget about it. Literally, I walk out the door of maths, forget about it. I didn't even know what was in the lesson. But whilst I was in the lesson, not a problem. When it came to do the homework, I just go back through the notes and I'd do that again. You're back in the moment. It's fine. But when there's that element of you've got to do a number of things and there's more distractions going on, did I need some help? And it turns out I needed some help. So this made a huge difference for me. So I'm not going to say what brand it is because I want to check out a few other ones as well. I want to see if there's a difference between them because at the moment, and obviously I want to know what impact it has over the longer term. Like, do they continue to work or do you get to a point where they just a bit like taking, you know, other types of substances, even with alcohol, you know, you gain a certain amount of, what's the word? You know, like you take it over and over again, you get used to it. So then you need more to get to the same kind of buzzy effect in your head. So I just want to see if there's a similar thing with this. And I want to try out a few different ones to see if there's one that is better or worse. And again, it could be that different people respond differently to slightly different formulas, slightly different amounts. So we'll see how that goes as well. And then, so that's where I'm at with that. That's been really good, really good. So I've been taking those Monday to Friday. And I would say, as I say, this is only week 2, making a huge difference still. And then on top of that, what was interesting was I didn't, as I say, took a Monday to Friday, didn't take any Saturday, but still felt focused. Sunday was interesting because when Sunday, I felt, oh, my brain's back to where it was, like pre-taking anything. So that was interesting in its own right. It's like it almost had like taking it 5 days. It lasted for the 6th day, but by the 7th day, it had worn off again. And so Monday, I took it again and boom, we're back in the zone and we're back focused and we're back getting things done. So I'm finding that very helpful, very useful. That's just my personal anecdotal experience, not recommended, not suggesting, just telling you what's been going on for me. So that's been interesting. Secondly, this week I saw, you know, a post from a friend of mine asking about how, you know, I guess look at it from a mathematical, statistical point of view, how many leads do you need through a funnel to determine if the funnel is viable, if it's working and so on. And from a statistics point of view, you know, the numbers would be huge. Like in order to have any kind of real statistical significance, you tend to have to work with larger numbers. And that in itself isn't viable, not if you're starting out with something. And so that led me to kind of thinking about the phrase I came up with this morning, which is this sort of minimum viable solution. And the reason I wanted to put this across is I think it's highly useful because this is how I approach it. It's highly useful to think of these as minimum viable steps. Like a strategy is designed to take you from where you are to where you want to get to, whatever the goal is. And the strategy maps out the steps. But within that, you can overcomplicate it and have more steps than you need. You can obviously get it wrong and have less steps than you need. So you need a way to actually allow you to look at it from different angles. But my whole approach has always been, what are the minimum viable steps? So viable means it's necessary, it's critical. If it wasn't there, the strategy wouldn't work. But then you don't want to add in things that are irrelevant. And certainly when you're coming out the gate and we're looking at something where you're putting together, you've decided what you're going to sell. You've decided you need a funnel to do that in some way. I mean, anything that has more than one step, you could call a funnel, certainly online. So then you got an advert, you're driving them to somewhere. You got to think in terms of what is the absolute critical step that you cannot do without. And certainly online, from a business point of view, you cannot do without some form of sale. So there's got to be something in the funnel, no matter where it is. There's got to be something in there, which is where you're actually making the sale, where you're saying, look, here's what I got to, here's my offer. And therefore, do you want it? Where you're asking for the money. So therefore, to my mind, the minimum viable step for anything is got to have that sales letter, got to have that sales video, got to have that web class, got to have some way of making an offer and asking for the money. And that's the critical step. And that's the bit I want to test as quickly as possible. So then if you look at it through the lens of problem solution. So what I like, one of the things I do like is, I've mentioned before, I've been involved in martial arts most of my life now. Certainly, at this age, most of my life has been as an adult. So therefore, most of my life I've been involved in martial arts. And in Krav Maga, which is the Israeli kind of self-defense approach and system, their philosophy is problem solution. So they look at it as problem solution. So for example, somebody grabs you around the neck, tries to get you in a chokehold. That's the problem. What's the solution? Somebody gets your arm in a lock, tries to obviously cause you a lot of pain to control you. That's the problem. What's the solution? So there's this whole problem solution focus, problem solution mentality. And it's like, bring that same approach to what you do. So if you look at, it's very easy to get drawn into, actually, let me just throw this in while I remember it. John Benson, who is the man who is kind of credited and known as the person who invented the video sales letter. He's just started his own YouTube channel. So he's kind of going through the major steps of creating a great video sales letter. Well worth finding on YouTube. John Benson, JONBENSON. So big shout out to him. And well worth going and watching his videos. Very good. Some really brilliant information in there. But if you look at what he's doing in the sales letter and then look at it through this lens of problem and solution. So if, for example, I was the first person ever to recognize that people were putting on more weight than they wanted to, and they needed a solution. So problem, they're putting on weight, they look in the mirror, they're not happy. So if they're not happy, they're looking for a solution. They want something. And if I'm the first person ever to have noticed this and gone, oh, I could do something about this, and to offer a solution, all I got to do is say, look, hey, do this and you'll lose weight. And say, okay, so here's what I'm suggesting you do. Here's what it's going to cost you. Do you want it? They're going to say yes. So that's problem solution. Now, here's why the sales letters and such like get a little bit more involved, because the problem changes. So now more and more people, so we've got enough of a marketplace of people who want to lose weight. So you've got more and more people. So of course that attracts other people who go, oh, I can offer a solution as well. So now you've got a new problem. So you go to someone and say, hey, you want to lose weight. I've got a solution to that. Do you want it? And now they say, well, you've got a solution. And Jenny over there has got a solution. And Fred over there has got a solution. Which one should I go with? See, now that's another problem. So now it's not as simple as, here's what I got. Do you want it? It's, here's what I've got. And I've got to explain to you how it's different to Jenny's and Eric's and Fred's and Susan's and so on. See, that's a problem solution. Does that make sense? Now imagine that any marketplace attracts a lot of people all offering their solutions. Now how do you decide? See, now we've got a bigger problem. So now you have more elements in your webinar or your video sales letter or your sales letter in order to address all those different problems. That's why it gets more involved. That's why it gets a little bit more complicated. But it's that problem solution mindset. So if you then approach it, okay, I've got an idea, but I don't know if anybody will pay for it. That's a problem. So how soon do you want to know the answer? As quickly as possible. So what's the fastest way to do that? Put up an ad and see if people click. Like literally write an ad. But now, of course, you go, okay, well, I'm going to write an ad. I'm going to say, hey, I've got this idea. Are you interested? Click. How many clicks do you need? Well, for me personally, I don't need many. I just need a few clicks and I go, okay, there's some interest here. Of course, once you start advertising, then you got a similar problem where, are you the only person advertising? Of course not. There's thousands of other people advertising. There's thousands of other people competing for someone's attention. So now you've got to find a way to stand out to the people that would be relevant to your idea, and therefore those are the people you want to see. Do they click? So you got to think of it in terms of problem solution. So I want to know, is it viable? And for me, viable typically means that somebody will pay for something. So certainly from an ad point of view, people clicking on an ad to therefore take them to the next step is an indicator. People landing on my sales letter or video sales letter or web class is an indicator. People watching it is an indicator. People buying is a great indicator. So you got to look at it in those terms. But if you think of it always in terms of problem solution, can you identify all the problems that you got to face? And can you therefore put a solution in place to deal with all of those? So we know that if I, like from my point of view, I tend to work with, if I can get 20 people to my sales letter and nobody buys, I don't make a single sale, then that concerns me. And there's no science behind that. That comes from my days doing pitch events. Because when I started out, I'd have roughly 20 people in the room. Literally, we used to run ads on the average event that I would do, there'd be 20 people in the room. So if there's 20 people in the room and nobody bought, I was upset. Like, why didn't anybody buy? And so I noticed over time from experience that I could pretty much test anything with 20 people in the room because I knew the problems I had to solve with my presentation in order to get to a point where the interest had grown to the point where somebody would be going, yes, I want this and I want to do this now. So I knew all the elements I need to put in there. So I knew, therefore, that I would expect that if I'd attracted an audience of people for whom this was relevant to and who were interested in this, then at least one of them should buy. And so I just bring that philosophy online. It's the same idea. So the ad, all the ad has to do is filter for the people that this is relevant to and who would be interested. So the fact that they click it demonstrates. That's a bit like somebody holding their hand up and saying, hey, I'm interested. That's all I'm interested. That's what I want to know. So that's that problem solved. So then if I get 20 of those people coming to my sales letter, then I expect that if that's 20 people who are interested. It's not just 20 random people off the street or 20 random people off Facebook or YouTube. It's 20 people interested. Otherwise, they wouldn't have clicked. And therefore, when they get to the sales letter, if I've got 20 people and none of them have bought, it's like something's missing here. Now, it could be, obviously, with the internet, you might go, well, it's easier to get distracted. So maybe you allow a little bit of leeway either way. Fine. Maybe. But that's my rule of thumb. But look at it, think of it in terms of problem, solution. What's the problem? What's the solution? And look at it in terms of logic. So as I said before, this idea that, you start out, if you're the only person on the planet who's seen the problem that people are facing, and you can see they're frustrated with it, and you offer them a solution, they're going to buy. But if you're no longer the only person offering a solution, then something's got to change. And the way you solve the problem might be unique, but it's still the same problem. Like, why do things niche? Why do we go from weight loss into all of these sub niches? Because it solves the problem of clutter. So in other words, as more and more people come into a marketplace, or more and more people have that similar problem. So of all the people who want to lose weight on the planet right now, how many millions of people are there? Probably it's got to be in the billions. Probably at least, I would imagine. So then in that, if you are in that position where you're wanting to lose weight and the marketplace cluttered, you're surrounded by people telling you they can solve your problem, they can do this. It's like, you're like, really, there's too many. Give people too much choice, they'll choose nothing, even though they want a solution. So you got to cut through all of that. So that's a problem in itself. People just like switch off because they're bombarded with things. It's like, enough already. Stop giving me a shameless pitch. Enough already. I've had enough. So you need a way to cut through that. That's a problem. How do you get around that? You come up with a unique message. You got to have something that stands out, that's unique, and that is plausible. It's got to be plausible. Otherwise, they're not going to pay any more attention to it. So again, that's a problem solution. Then, of course, you go, okay, well, what's one way to cut through that and be unique? Well, instead of saying, I've got something that will help you lose weight, you aim it at a specific group of people. So, for example, women who've just had a baby and want to lose the baby weight. That's a specific niche. So if you are wanting to lose weight and you see something which appeals directly to you and you go, oh, that's me, you're going to give it more attention. It's like if somebody called out your name, you'd suddenly turn because it's your name. You pay more attention to it. So then, of course, you got the whole thing of, well, do people really want to lose weight, or is there something more to it? So then you got the situation of, well, within that, what men want versus what women want, predominantly generalizing, is more men want six-pack abs. That's not obviously all men, but there is certainly a subgroup of men who just want six-pack abs. They're not just losing weight to lose weight. They want to look like a Greek god. So then you can call those people out. And then you could even subdivide it even further. I've mentioned this before, six-pack abs for 40-something dads. That's very specific. So if you've got a 40-something dad bod and you've got children, so you're a dad and you're looking to lose weight and actually get in great shape and look and feel more like you did with the energy and the sort of vitality and the youthfulness of you in your 20s, and maybe you're missing that, then something that calls out to you specifically, six-pack abs for 40-something dads, now you go, oh, I'm paying attention to that. You're at least intrigued, even if you don't believe it. That makes sense. So all that is a response to problem, too many people offering a solution to weight loss. So how do you get around it? Well, that's why niching occurs. And then, of course, it just keeps going down, sub-niche, 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 as long as they remain big enough to be viable. If they're not viable, like six-pack abs for 93-year-old grandmothers who knit and crochet.com. Probably not much of a market there. But you get the idea. It's all problem, solution, problem, solution. So if you get into that problem, solution mindset, then from a logic point of view, you just got to think through what all the problems are, or at least do some research, look at what other people are doing and go, okay, that's a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem. That's why this needs to be in the sales letter. Why does this need to be in the sales letter? Why does this need to be in the sales letter? Then, yes, you get into better quality solutions. So looking at it from the lens of psychology, it's like what causes someone to pay attention to something more? What would cause something to be more, to find something more believable? And so that's where you get the whole thing of creating a common enemy, like polarization works. Why? Because we're tribal. We've been, human beings are all tribal. We have been forever. So that's still relevant. And obviously we had to be tribal in order to survive, and you didn't want to get kicked out from your tribe because then, of course, your chance of survival was pretty minimal. So that still plays a big part in terms of our hypothalamus and so on, in terms of the older parts of our brain. So that's tribal. So the common enemy is tribal. So polarization still works, which is why you see so much of it on Facebook. Like yesterday, there was a political post that I commented on. By the way, I'm politically homeless. I don't have any political affiliation. But I saw this and I kind of I just asked a question. But what's interesting is the idea of polarization or disagreeing with somebody or finding somebody to disagree with is so strong online that other people commented it without reading my comment properly. They read it through this person's wrong, I disagree. This person disagreed with me, I'm going to show him I'm right. So immediately they went to, I want this to be polarizing, to the point where I actually responded and said, that's not what I said. Literally, it's like you're misinterpreting what I said. So they were distorting what I was saying. Humans do that as well. And putting a meaning on it that wasn't there in order to create polarization. So it's interesting that we default to that. So you can use polarization as a psychological tool to make your sales letters more powerful, which is where branding comes in. So branding is very much around the idea of, can you stand for a certain set of values and can you oppose something so that you deliberately polarize? What I do, while we're on this topic, because I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but while we're on this topic, polarizing because you stand for something that you genuinely believe in, perfect, 100%. I absolutely love people. I absolutely want to make a difference. I absolutely am a coach first and foremost, and that is number one before profit. But I know I need to make a profit, and I also know I need to make a certain amount of money for the goals that I want to achieve that make me feel good. So that's all part of it. But I absolutely believe in that, and I absolutely stand for that, and I stand for freedom, autonomy, and all those sort of things. Polarizing where you make crap up just to be polarizing, it's so easy to see. And it ain't good. I hate it. Personally, I hate it. So I see, and that's funny actually, that word, because you'll see people saying, oh, I posted this post on another platform. So if you see it on Facebook, say, I posted on LinkedIn, and all these haters jumped on saying this, and this. And they're using that because by mentioning that, then all the people that like them, who are polarized to them, will jump on and go and agree with them. But actually, and I've done this a couple of times because I was like, this seems like an odd post. So I've then gone to LinkedIn to find the post they're talking about to see the comments that are on it. There's no hate. It's just maybe other people with a slightly different perspective, but it ain't hate. Or giving a bigger perspective. It still ain't hate. It's not even a disagreement. It's just like, yeah, I agree with that, and maybe look at it from this perspective, or maybe in this situation, this would be true rather than that being true. That's not hate. That's not even a disagreement. But then to turn that into, oh, these people were hating on me because you deliberately want to create polarization because somebody's taught you about polarization. I don't like that. And I've seen that. I see that regularly on Facebook from certain people. And I don't like it. It doesn't appeal to me. In itself, it polarizes me against it. But obviously it does work because the people who like the person doing it still like them. They're not calling them out on it. But I personally just don't like that. So polarization works. But again, a bit like scarcity works, use it ethically. You know, a friend of mine sent me something last week saying, you know, could I do this? And it was one of these where you're registering for a webinar, and the countdown time of the webinar was always starting in 15 minutes. Like, it didn't matter when you went to it. It was always starting in 15 minutes. It's like, yeah, I don't like it. It's like, there are better ways to use scarcity. There are more congruent, plausible, useful ways to use scarcity than by doing something that is so obviously false that it immediately puts me off. So I'd rather not do that because it's not honest. It's like, I'm all for scarcity. It's very powerful. It's very useful. It can be used as a tool to help people to get them to make a decision. So therefore, I'm open to using these tools. It's like I've said this before, you know, the tools are good and the tools of evil, the same tools. You just got to use them right. So look, I'm going to keep this short because it's getting really warm in here because obviously we've had some phenomenal weather, credible heat wave. We're just not used to this sort of heat here. And I saw a little joke about somebody in Scotland saying, you know, this kind of heat, we're not used to this in Scotland. You know, people are going to die. You know, we've got gingerhead people here that they're not going to cope. You know, so yeah, it's hot now. So I'm going to keep this short. But the key things I want you to take away from this is, look, start thinking in terms of problem solution mindset, always. And always think in terms of minimum viable steps. So a strategy is always the minimum steps, not the maximum steps. Like, what are the minimum steps? The absolute minimum steps when you're starting out will always be your pitch. You got to have an offer. You got to have some way of saying, here's my offer. Do you want it? Collect the money. And that's where you start. Don't start creating complicated sales funnels where you're getting people to opt in. Then you send them 60 different videos before you finally get around to saying, by the way, do you want to buy the product? No, because each of those steps will cause a drop off. That's friction. I wrote about this in a post yesterday in the group. That's friction. Eliminate it in the beginning. Literally send people from advert straight to sales pitch. See what happens. Get a sale. Make sure the sales letter works. Then start getting fancy, because everything you then add in is there to increase the conversion of the sales letter so you make more sales. Or you have another problem, which is actually my ad costs are going up. What do I do now? Well, that's where you start adding upsells and downsells to your sales letter or to the first step, because you want to increase the average order value as quickly as possible. Like, for example, somebody clicks your ad, they go to a page. Like Russell Brunson, I went through one of Russell Brunson's sales letters for his free book offer. Now, I know from listening to Russell that funnel, because behind it there are upsells and downsells, makes a profit straight away. So you're not going, oh, please give me your email address, and then, oh, come on my webinar in 3 days' time, by which time they've forgotten all about it, so you lose them. There's always drop-off. Friction creates drop-off. But if you can, whilst you've got their attention, keep their attention and leverage that to help them with something that's of value to them and generate a profit yourself, not a problem. So problem, rising ad costs. Solution, increase the average order value at the point of sale. So add straight to a funnel which immediately starts making an offer, and then add other things to it to increase the average order value so that you recoup your ad costs so you can continue advertising and gaining more customers. Problem, solution, problem, solution. Does that make sense? All these things, this is why they exist. They're all solutions to a problem. But start with minimum viable steps, which is literally 2 steps. Add, sales pitch, add, sales pitch. Start there, always. Then start adding on new problem, new solution. New problem, I want to increase the conversion, new solution. Start adding more steps, only because it helps increase the impact you have, the influence you have, and the profit that you make, and the difference that you make. That's it. All right, look, I'm going to go. It's hot. It's hot for you as well, I'm sure. Enjoy the rest of your week. Leave me any questions below, and I will see you again next week. All right, take it easy.